All right. Well, Maddie, welcome to the show, love.
Hey, I'm so excited to be here.
I am too. So, in true Jess and Maddie fashion, we were just talking off air without recording, and you started to get into some really juicy stuff. And I was like, hold
I know.
on,
I
let
was
me hit
like, wait,
record.
pause, 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 pause.
Pause. We got to get into record.
Yeah.
So now we're recording, and I'm like, all right, rewind. Let's get back into it. So, I'm going to pick up where you and I just left off, which for the audience, they have no clue what we're talking about. But what we're talking about is this idea that you left Hollywood. You were working out as an EA, an executive assistant in Hollywood. You're doing the red carpets and all the fancy schmancy.
Yeah.
Jumped over to Soul Cycle instructor, which if you don't know Maddie, come on, she's one of like the arguably the more famous Soul Cycle instructors. You've been doing it how long?
9 years.
Yeah, like 100 years in
A
fitness
hundred
world.
years in fitness world, in
Literally, it's
fitness
like a dog.
lives.
It's like dog lives.
It's
Yeah,
like
like
dog years.
100 lives of. I can't even imagine how many rides you've done. It's
I don't
insane.
know. I truly don't know.
Insane.
There's no record of it because when we originally like
They didn't have
OG Soul
computers back
Cycle,
then.
no, we signed in on a sheet of paper. You'd like sign your name.
You're in the
So
cave etching things into the wall. Hieroglyphics.
I am a hieroglyphic on the wall on a bike, literally.
But actually, so what we were talking about was actually this idea of over the years, you've been there for so long, you're such an OG, your classes are packed. They're like this. I've never been able to take one in person, which is crazy. I'm like dying to. We got to get that on the calendar. But what I've heard from so many friends and just people that take class, it's like Tony Robbins meets like music festival, EDM party, add on like a little bit of Oprah Winfrey, maybe some Mel Robbins, and it's just like this massive personal development just party. And it's incredible. So knowing that and the impact that you've had on so many lives and the amount of people that I'm sure come up to you after class day after day after day and talk about how much you've changed their life and how great class was. And you probably have classes that you leave feeling on a high, right? That runner's high.
Yeah.
Yet you've sort of gone through these moments of, I'm going to leave, I'm done.
Yeah. I call it like the rumbling for me, and it happens every so often because I think I've always chased like my new thing I say a lot is the carrot is a holograph because as somebody who is a high achiever, you're always looking for that carrot. What's next? And I remember one year I got like double promoted. I got promoted to senior and master instructor in the same year just because like they gave me a number and I was like, I'm going to go hit this number. And I've always been like that. And I've asked my dad, I was like, did something happen? Like, was this something like, because, I feel like now everybody talks about like therapy and trauma and like it's all thrown around so much. And I was like, is there, and he's like, Madison, you were just always wired that way. Like there was nothing, you just loved it. You loved being a part of things. You loved doing all the things, winning the things, being like the captain of the teams and doing this and that. And like you were a natural born leader in all the places.
What sports did
So
you play?
I did like a myriad of things like softball, soccer, track. I did it all. And then high school, I just cheered, did track, and then I would dance at night.
Okay.
So I like still had a
I'm seeing a
thousand things
pattern.
going. So, like, yeah, right. Like a little bit of an overachiever. Like was the star in the play, was in the band, like I did all the things. Um, but that's just like who I was, and it was like awesome. So I feel like that whole thing for me, the carrot is a holograph. I've gotten to a point now where I've had to really work my mindset and shift in a lot of different ways. And I think I go through these periods of time where when I feel the true rumbling of why I want to leave or like I'm done with this, I'm over it. I mean, I really just relate it back to that's when like my ego is searching a lot of times and like, oh, like I know. And like it's really hard to kind of peel the layer back from I want more for myself and just that ego a little bit of like I'm making it more about myself than about other people.
Mm.
Because if I'm bringing it back to my why and my like fundamental reason for why I do what I do, it's to serve and inspire and impact lives. And I'm impacting hundreds of lives daily in person. And yet I feel like a lot of the rumblings come from when I'm on the internet comparing myself to other coaches or other people or
Interesting.
whatever. And I'm like, but wait, I'm literally impacting hundreds of lives per day in person. And yet I'm looking at what other people are doing and thinking I'm not enough. That's where a lot of it, like, oh, I need to break away. I need to whatever. And that's where a lot of that, like, frustration and anger came. It happened it happened during COVID, and I go kind of through this period of time, but when it comes up, it's usually having to do with feeling like it's like that. I'm not doing enough, or I see people doing more. I want more, but also there's a little bit of it. There's like another emotion behind it too.
Yeah.
I think like I'm forgetting the service-based mindset of it and making it again, like me,
Yeah.
so it's a little bit delicate ballet dance between like that ego a little bit. Cause it's also healthy to have some ego.
Absolutely.
Um, and then versus, service-based mindset, but you're impacting hundreds of lives daily. Hundreds, not many people can say that.
Yeah.
So it's like
But
one of
there's
those,
also, so definitely want to come back to
you're like,
comparison. Yeah. Cause I love talking about this, especially with you. You're brilliant at this. But when we're talking about ego and sort of the rumbling, and you're talking about when I come back to recognizing that I'm here for the service and the impact, and it's not about me, it's about them. There's also this fine line between like, you're not actually filling your own cup up, right? We want to fill from an over pour. We don't want to empty our cup for other people and only be serving and only be providing. And then we're left unfulfilled and empty. And so I wonder for you, and I don't know if you've ever thought about this or really unpacked it, but do you think at all that sometimes the rumblings come in the moments that you're maybe feeling a little bit bored because you could do this in your sleep? And while the thank yous and the lives that you're changing, that never gets old. That's why you keep coming back. But I'm wondering if the rumblings are coming from a place of like, I haven't really stretched myself and I'm not getting out of my comfort zone. That's how I feel in my
a,
business. And so I'm wondering if
yeah,
that's come up for you. Yeah.
1,000%.
Yeah.
I've even said that. Like I've said that recently. Like I'm bored. And when I'm not bored is when I love music. So it's like I get bored, but like Chainsmokers drop a new album and I'm like, oh, this is great. I can do
Yeah.
it. Like now I'm gonna have so much fun and like do all the play and it's gonna be great. And like because I'm a music junkie too. Like I went to school for music. So I definitely think that it comes out of boredom. And then I really have tried to reframe it like, okay, well, if you are going to say, then how do you become more of a leader and more of a teacher in this space than just doing what you're doing? Because it's no longer fulfilling necessarily for me, unless it's like those classes that blow me out of the water.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this from a selfish standpoint either. And I think that's also something, it's just like I'm not being creatively challenged
Mm.
right now anymore in the space I'm in.
Is that why you started sort of these other, what I would call cute side hustles, right? You have a journal you sell, you have online coaching that you do and courses, you have your podcast, Wicked Fearless. Was that all like, I'm looking for something creative outlet, need, or, oh my God, my community's asking me for this stuff. I have to put it out there.
I think what would happen, honestly, like the reason why I started the podcast was because I feel like so many people come up and they say, like, oh, you said this, you said that. And I'm like, okay, but there's so much more to than just this 30-second mic drop moment at the end of class where I give you this like divine download and it's like boom, 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 boom. There's so much more beyond that. And it's
Yeah.
like I get 60 of you for 45 minutes. Like imagine all that we could talk about beyond the bike, which was like actually the original name of my podcast, was
Yeah.
just Mads Tads Beyond the Bike, until I like rebranded and made everything more a little bit like, synced up. But I was like, there's just so much more to talk about. There's so much more to these like 2-second golden nuggets. And that's originally why I started that. And then in terms of the coaching and things like that, I think that was obviously born out of COVID and not being able to use my voice or use the studio. And I was like, wait a minute, like the bike is just kind of like the vessel. Like I'm the message. That's like the mode of transportation. Like I am the message. I am, all these things come from inside me. So now it's like, how do I find another modality to move that message through?
Yeah.
And that's what birthed like the programs and the Beyond the Bike stuff, all the things that came outside of Soul Cycle.
I know you're special. Are you special in that you get these downloads? Like you're like, it just comes through me at the end of class. I just say these things. They're not scripted. I didn't write them ahead of time. And for someone listening who's like, what? I struggle so much with that type of stuff. Or how do you get that not motivation, inspiration? How do you get that inspiration? Where's it coming from? Are you like listening to a podcast on your way to go teach a class? Are you always reading books? Are you highlighting, or does it literally just channel through you?
I'd say I'm doing all of those things and then trusting that I like staying open and trusting that like I'm going to be able to bring up whatever I'm feeling. And, I say this all the time. What's personal is universal. And somehow it's always this divine download for me. It doesn't always happen. But I also do a lot to kind of pad that knowledge in. I'm
Yeah.
constantly listening to things, constantly reading things. So whether it's just a summation of all this knowledge that I'm constantly kind of like seeping in, yes, but it also creates that environment to then be like, oh my God. And then you have these moments where it's all pieced together perfectly. And that's when you have that like pop moment
Yeah.
in class.
When you have one of those moments, do you use it again in another class? Like if you teach two in the same day?
No,
Never.
like and so I've been talking about trying to find a way to like record what I say in the room
I was just going to ask you to do
that's
that.
not messed up with the music. Like I'm trying to look for a certain piece with the way our room is set up, because I feel like if I just were to record on my phone, the music would overpower the voice or
Yeah.
whatever. Like that'd be all distorted,
Use a
because
lav.
I call it like I black out. Like I do not remember what I said. All I know is like I'll look at one of my friends and I'll like just like wink at them and I'll be like, that was
Nailed
good.
that.
Like
Yeah.
that, I don't know
Yeah.
where that came from. Like, and I'll walk out and be like, nope, never again. Like it
Yeah.
will never happen again. I could kind of piece it together. Sometimes some of my girlfriends will text me afterward and be like, this is actually what you said, almost like
Wow.
whatever, if they remember. But a lot of us are always like, nope, that was that moment. And if you weren't there, you weren't there. It was
Yeah.
like,
Oh
yeah,
man, you need to have on like your own private wireless lav.
I
And then
know.
you know how Lewis Howes does his like new podcast, what is it called? It's like he basically, I forgot what it's called. He's basically taking every mic drop moment from every episode he's done with every guest for, the 1,000 episodes that he's done. And it's its own podcast now. I'm going to find it. And they're
I
no
haven't even
longer,
seen that.
oh, it's so good. It's called The Daily Motivation. They're no longer than 10
Ah,
minutes. And they're clips that have been edited together from specific episodes. And they're just like the hard hitting. And then you can go listen to the full episode on his podcast. But
oh, I love
you
that.
should totally have like a wireless lav where you're just recording something, those mic drop moments, and then you can have a whole series or like your own podcast or put it on the current podcast. And then you can use AI to transcribe it. And they could be these like little text messages that go out or
That's
something.
that's the goal, is trying to
Oh, I
figure out
love
how to
it.
get it out of the studio and then
Yeah.
into these voice clips, or putting on SoundCloud and making like a playlist with it or
Playlist.
whatever. There's
Yeah.
so many ideas
There's
around that.
so many things to do. All right. If you're listening to this episode and you're like a genius at this stuff, or
Yeah.
you're not, but you have an idea,
Message us.
message us, let us know. Yeah. Cause truly there are so many mic drop moments. So I'm curious, when you think about being in the studio with SoulCycle, right? You've been
Mhm.
there for 100 years, as we said. 5 years from now, do you imagine you're doing the same thing? Are you still teaching classes? Where do you see your life with studio and with SoulCycle going?
I don't know.
Yeah.
That's a really tough one for me. I do not have a clear vision of what the next iteration looks like.
Wait,
I
wait,
don't
you don't know everything? And you
Yeah, I
still
don't
wake
know
up every day
everything.
and you still
Yeah.
pursue?
Yeah, yeah. If I were to say, I don't think I will be doing Soul Cycle in the capacity that I'm doing it. Definitely not. And if I was still at Soul Cycle in 5 years, I would be really interested to see how that leadership role came to be,
Yeah.
if that was the case. But I don't know. Part of me is just like, I don't think I would still be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, people say that now. I'm surprised you're still there, if I'm being honest, like all the time. I'm surprised you're still there. And there is a lot around it. There is identity, there is love, there is community, there is Soul Cycle saved me in a lot of ways. And I talk about
Yeah.
that all the time. Like I was going down like a dark path of like drinking, drugs, and craziness in LA. And it gave me this non-negotiable moment of a stake in the ground with, you can either be one of the best in what you do, or you're going to keep screwing around with your life like you have been and not figuring it out. And so there's a lot wrapped up in it. It's not just like your job, it's so much. So
Yeah.
I think it's like peeling that all back, and there's going to be a lot of shedding and a lot of letting go. And I think there'll be just a lot there.
Yeah.
And it's all like beautiful and happy. And it's like, how great is it that you can like have had something so amazing? And not many people can say they've been somewhere for 9 years.
No.
And created that level of impact and love and all the things. And even though it's that delicate ballet dance of now, like you said, but you want it more creatively, there's something there. So I think there will
When
be a lot of changes in the next
Yeah,
5 years.
when you were sort of at this rock bottom moment and SoulCycle saved you, as you said, were you
Yeah.
going as a client and it saved you, or were
Yeah.
you working there already?
So I So I used to go as a client before I ever worked there. So like we're talking, I've worked there for 9 years. I've been riding for like 13. I don't know. I think I took my first ride in 2012. So that's what, 11 years,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
And so I was a client for that. I used to take Angela Davis, who then was at Army. And speaking of like divine downloads on the bike, I mean, like her and Jesus, God, whatever you believe in, are besties. I believe she believes in God, Jesus. So, that place was like my safe space,
Yeah.
and it continues to be. And so,
It's incredible.
yeah, no, it is incredible. I think a lot of times, like how lucky, how blessed am I to have found something like this? And I think that's what makes leaving it or moving on from it or having
So
it look
hard. Yeah.
different so challenging.
Yeah.
It's not so cut and dry.
Yeah.
And then also, if it wasn't as impactful as it was, it would be so easy to walk away.
Yeah. When you were
So
in your
there's,
sort of rock bottom, I'm only
yeah,
saying that because you said that.
yeah.
Were you looking for something, or did this fall in your lap? Were you like, I can't keep living this way anymore? Did you know that you were kind of at a crossroads with the path that you were currently on? Or was it like an
So
intervention?
no, for me, it was like I'll never forget. A girlfriend of mine gave me Gabby Bernstein's book, Spirit Junkie.
Yep.
And I read that book and I related to it so much that just my lifestyle started to change. And that's when I started to like really like, but I was still kind of splitting my time. Like I always say, like there's no meme that I've ever felt as connected to as the one that's like, will this green juice on Monday make up for like all the things, the ways I trashed my body this weekend? And that was literally me. I was like, I was at Erewhon and like Earth Bar, and I was like hanging out Equinox was Hollywood, and I was like the it girl in like this world, but then I was like the it girl at the Velvet Rope Club and like going to Voyeur and all these like crazy clubs. And so it was like I was constantly straddling this line. And I remember it actually happened it was like when I was already teaching, really, that I had to make a decision of like, do you want to be one of the best? Or again, do you want to just kind of like flounce around
Yeah.
and let these old habits keep stopping you from being whatever like best version of yourself you could be in this job? Like,
Yeah.
do you want to be a contender? Do you want to be a champion? Like, it was that type of mindset of like, then you absolutely have to make this a non-negotiable of like
Yeah.
changing your lifestyle. And I
We,
think that that's why I am who I am today, is like that decision.
yeah, absolutely. But like you said earlier, you also have this high achiever tendency, like these traits where it's like how you do one thing is how you do everything, and how you
Yeah.
do everything is really, really well. And you kind of go all in. And when I hear your story, and I know we obviously relate on this level, especially when it comes to clubs and music festivals and electronic music, like we have
Yeah.
very similar stories. And I am not a huge drinker. I wonder, I mean, now I've had one drink I can count on one hand because it was last week. I had a glass of wine, and it was the first drink I've had in about a year.
Yeah.
But that's been my life for the last 10 years or so. And it's interesting because right now not drinking is sort of trending to the point where
So I
like,
see that
but
everywhere.
it's one of those things where like, here we go. The pendulum has swung so far again. And now people are like shaming other people for drinking. And it's like, just stop. Would you just like live
Yeah.
your life? Do you ever have drinks now?
Yeah, not super often though. Like you said, I think I just got to a point with my body where even now, if I have like a glass of wine or two, I'll have like a migraine. And I'm
Yeah.
like, so we're
Not
back
worth
at
it.
square one where like, okay, so recently, I got married and we drank a lot on our wedding. Like we just went for it. And I like wanted to kill myself the next day. I was like, oh my God, this is literally why I don't do this. I can't believe, what I was like, when you are so tuned into your body and you have made health such a priority in your life, you don't realize how high vibrationally you are
Yeah.
until you like have a night like that on our wedding, which was the best night ever. Like, wouldn't take anything back. But you wake up the next day and I'm like, I can't believe that some people wake up like this every weekend. And I
Right.
used to do that too.
Yeah.
I just didn't know how good I could feel.
Hmm.
And now that I do, it's really tough to negotiate down, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's for me, like the exact same reason.
Yeah.
It's just like, why would I? I don't need to do it. And I don't need to drink to have fun, and I don't need to do it at all. And for me, it's just like the juice isn't worth the squeeze. And I'm like, I don't get it. Like when I'm just feeling so great anyway. So I'm with you on that. I totally get it. But
Yeah.
also not labeling and putting yourself into a box where there's like this restriction. And it's like, right, yeah, whatever. If I want to have a drink, I'm going to have a drink. So when you look at
Yeah.
yourself in a holistic approach with health, is spin, obviously you're riding a lot. Is that the only type of workout that you're doing? Are you doing other things? We all want to know Maddie's health routine
Oh
because you
my
also
God.
have a
Yeah.
huge like morning routine and rituals and all of that. So what does that look like?
Okay. So I do a lot of other things outside of Soul Cycle. Recently I have been like back in the gym lifting a lot,
Yeah.
like big time. Like I hired a trainer before my wedding and I was like, I want to look jacked at my wedding. And he was like, okay. I also did a bunch of like gut health testing and all these different things. Cause like you could think you're the epitome of health and then you get an even deeper test done. And I mean, I've gotten blood tests, all these other tests. And I found out I was like severely, and I was never having any like stomach issues. It was more like tired. I was like having migraines all the time. I was constantly so exhausted. I like felt like I could literally fall asleep on the sidewalk. And all these tests came back like super, super high inflammation around gluten, like all
Mm,
this crazy stuff. So I completely changed up my diet, completely changed up the way I was working out outside of, Soul. I feel like I wasn't just going to do other hit workouts. Like, don't get me wrong, I love berries, I love
sure.
running, I love all these other things, but just trying to switch it up more, even just also for like my nervous system, like doing more like chill stuff. And kind of having a more like well-rounded approach. I think that's massively helped me recently than just being like upper, 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 upper all the time.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to routine, I mean, my morning routine is like my most sacred thing.
Tell us
So
about it.
I wake up, I like already have, I'm usually going to teach something in the morning. So this, pretend like you're getting up to either teach or go work out. I always have my outfits picked out the night before. I've learned this so many times because I am the girl that will literally wake up and I will change my sports bra like 7 times for no reason. And I'm like, the amount of energy I just wasted. No. So like the outfits are picked out the night before. I like make my breakfast. I get my coffee. I go sit down. I do my gratitude journal. I usually do like a book pull and I do some kind of like spiritual work. So I'll either pull like a Bible verse or something that's like of the late of like a more spiritual connection. I do all those things, like kind of put on my spiritual armor for the day and then go out and have a day.
Yeah.
And that's like what keeps me sane,
Yeah. Do you
somewhat
have a
sane.
nighttime routine?
So my nighttime routine is more like I really try to not be on my phone. Like really, really, really try to not be on my phone. I'm actually really good at it when I'm reading. So I usually like an hour to 2 hours before I go to sleep, try to put my phone away and read something. And I also drink like a sleepy time beam. I don't know if you've heard of beam, but I'm
Mhm.
obsessed with it. They have a white chocolate peppermint tea that is like an
Ooh,
adult, I guess hot chocolate with a peppermint twist. I'm obsessed with it. So that's my night routine. And
so
that's
good.
I know it seems like kind of rigid. Like some people are like, oh, I can't do these morning routines and things like that. But I don't know. For as long as I can honestly remember, it just makes life so much better.
Yeah.
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 Like even when we travel and stuff and some people are like I did this whole post about how like I got so out of my routine in Paris and I didn't really have fun in Paris when we went in December. It was like freezing. I was like, it threw off my sleep. It threw off my routine. I didn't have like the most miraculous time, even though I'm so grateful. I'm so blessed to see these things that some people will never get to see in their lives. Like I understand all that. But like for me, with the time I had, I was like, was this worth throwing literally everything off for the next
Yeah.
2 weeks? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
That's how much I like my routine.
Yeah. I'm the same way. And I've shared so many times. My routine used to be super rigid down to the minute. People would ask me on on a podcast, like, what's your morning routine? I'd break it down. And if one of the things didn't happen or they happened out of order, I would feel thrown off for the day. And then after a couple of years, it got to a point where it started to turn into a little bit of a to-do list. And I was sort of checking the different things off and it wasn't doing what it was supposed to be doing anymore. So I had to revisit it. I got to revisit what my morning routine looked like. And for the past probably 3 years since RV life. Now it's a little bit more intuitive of like, what do I need today? Is today a card pull day? Is it a meditation day? Is it a reading day? Movement is non-negotiable, of course, and reading, but sometimes it happens at night. And I've been a little bit more fluid and also less rigid with, if I don't meditate for an hour and 15 minutes, but I only
Yeah.
meditate for 45 or 20, like it's still good, Jess, like good
Yeah.
job. So
Yeah.
for the listeners that are listening who feel like the morning routine or nighttime routine is suddenly becoming this like other thing that you have to do, I would just encourage you to remember like the intention of a routine like that is to set yourself up for the day. I love that you said spiritual armor. I'm just like such a visual person. So I see this visual of you literally putting on spiritual shin guards, and because
Like
you're going to get
literally.
kicked, you know you're going to get kicked in the
You're
shin
gonna
throughout
get
the
kicked in
day.
the shin.
Yeah. And it hurts. So it's like either whine about it or just put on your shin guards, right? I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about it. Let's get into comparison. You
Uh,
mentioned it before. You said it
woo.
comes up sometimes for you in the digital space, which I find really interesting because it also comes up for me in the digital space. Shocking, I know. But
Yeah.
for me, as an instructor in a 18-year fit pro,
Yeah.
it definitely was more present for me in real life with my body, coming from someone who also had
Interesting.
an eating disorder for so long. So I'm just really interested, does it ever happen through the lens of Soul Cycle? You're doing fitness modeling and shoots, you're speaking on stages, like lots of real life things. You're working out in a sports bra, showing all your, abs off and stuff. Does it
Yeah.
ever come up for you there? And then let's also transition after that into the online space.
What's interesting? I don't think I've ever been asked that. And I don't feel that
Yeah.
in person. And whether that's just because I work hard to look the way I do, and I'm like very proud of the work I put in. Um, and I don't know if it's always been like that, but the chapter that I'm in right now, especially with like how much work I've done and like changing my diet and like really honing in on all that and like just the amount of work I do, I think now it's coming from more of like a proud standpoint, and I don't compare myself to others in that sense.
Yeah.
I really can't think of that. I think that was probably fueled more from like competing and things like that. Like I probably felt that way. I always tell like the story of like auditioning for Patriots cheerleading and things like that. I think, or pageants, and when I've done things like that, or auditioning for doing cheerleading squads and things like that, I think that's when you're in comparison because you're looking at people
Sure.
around you. Like I'm not as skinny as her, I'm not as whatever. I don't have this tone definition. But I think right now I don't really feel that in person. Um, I think it's more like if I'm at events or things like that, yeah, I don't internalize it like, oh, like it doesn't make me feel bad. I'm like, yeah, oh, I could have that too. Oh, that cool like sequin outfit. That would be a cool look for next time. Or like, I want
Yeah.
those dunks, like whatever. Like now it's more like,
Yeah.
oh, like, hey,
What's
like I can do
possible?
that. What's possible versus like it turning it on myself and making it more of like a like it's not like shame. Like, is
Yeah.
it body like feeling like that about myself? Which I guess means I'm like in a good place internally there.
Yeah.
I think where I'm struggling most with it is 100% on the internet
Mm.
because I just think there is so much noise and we are in such an influx. Like, I don't think our human brains were ever supposed to handle this influx of information.
Yeah.
And whether that's like we could go social media, then we could go constant news, constant this, being a literally bleeding heart for the entire world, for every tragedy, for everything, all day, all the time. It's like, I cannot process all of this. Like, I'm just trying to keep like myself like sane and good so I can go out there and do good. And
Yeah.
it's more challenging now than ever.
Well, we
Every
haven't caught
time you
up.
open your, yeah,
We haven't caught up at all. It's like we're still, our bodies and brains are still wired for like, okay, go out, work on your farm, do the things that you need to do. No, but like truly, it's like it was
but
very
will they ever
simple.
catch up?
I
Will
don't
they ever
know.
catch? I don't,
I'm not sure. It's certainly going way too fast for us though,
yeah.
for us to catch up. Um, let's stay here for 1 second. You said, I love this. Now you can sort of see what's possible, right? I always say borrow the
Mm,
evidence from someone else until you have the evidence in your own life. So you see the girl on stage and she's got the cool dunks or the sparkly outfit and you're like, ooh, cool, that's possible. if you were to have a moment where that wasn't how you felt and you started to go
Yeah.
down a spiral, do you have a tool, a trick, a tactic, a something that you kind of like trigger yourself back into a higher vibration state of gratitude? Oh, this is possible versus spiraling down the hole of comparison.
I think that I have to allude back to a Gabby Bernstein thing, like forgive yourself for having the thought in the moment and return to love. Because I think that whenever I'm having thoughts like that, I am not, I'm not being kind to myself. Like I'm not looking at all that I have accomplished. Like I'm kind of diminishing myself to like the smallest little thing possible.
Yeah.
And I'm forgetting all that I am. And it's kind of like, wait a second. It's almost like I have to it's like, I would say, like, call yourself out on your crazy a little bit. And sometimes, like, just even saying that out loud or just being like, wait, hold up, pump the brakes. Like, let's not ride the pony. I call it like riding the pony to the Badlands. Like, let me just kind of why, like,
Yeah.
and also, like, what is it about this moment or what is it about this? Is it because I want that? I'd say like 99% of the time, if I'm upset or like I'm feeling like that trigger in the moment, we talk like triggers are so like, they're so like, I feel like they're everywhere now.
Yeah.
Like everybody's
Yeah.
talking about their triggers. But if something is,
I don't drink and I have a lot of triggers.
yeah, I don't think I have so many triggers. But like if I am triggered, say watching a girl on stage, it's because she has what I want.
Sure.
So instead of being like, well, screw her, I'm just like, okay, it's something I want. What can I do to put myself in that position? What can I learn from this? I
Yeah.
think one of the best things my dad has always said is like, the whys don't help you. Why not me? What is like, why? Woe is me. It's like, okay, well, what is this teaching me? Like, what can I learn from this? Like, what can I then go apply in my life? What skills, what tacticals, like maybe you learn from that person. I think that's a
Yeah.
huge thing. And also just realize that anybody doing anything is just proof that you can too. Like it literally is just proof that you can do it too. So like the fact that I like teach Soul Cycle, you can do that too. Like there's so many things like that should serve as just like proof that you can do it too.
Yeah. I love
And I
it.
think when you kind of like pull back a little bit, like I use that term all the time, like riding the pony to the Badlands, because I think of like you tell the horse where to go. And that's kind of like your brain, like,
Mhm.
whoa, no, we're gonna go this way. And I think the more you can kind of reroute like that when those moments happen and just stay in that curiosity and
Mhm.
not like beat the crap out of yourself for having the thought, the better off you're gonna be. And you're gonna be able to move through those almost like faster and faster and even recognize them in the moment. Like you
Yeah.
might even recognize it before you like, oh, this is making me kind of feel some type of way,
Mhm.
and then reroute
Yeah.
before it even goes to the spiral
Your dad
moment.
is a wise man. The quality of your questions. No, truly ask better questions, get better
Yeah.
answers, right? So
Yeah.
I'm going to give an homage here to Gabby Bernstein as well.
Oh,
I think she was a gateway into personal development for a lot of people.
yeah.
And I think for you and I both, it sounds like it was around the same timeline where I was first introduced to Spirit Junkie and then all of her other books as well. For me, it was very much a gateway. And one of the books, I don't remember which one, probably Miracles Now, something, one of the older ones, she also talked about snap out of it. And she would wear
Yeah.
a rubber band on her bracelet.
And
I'm sorry, on
snap.
her wrist. And she would
Yeah.
literally snap it on her wrist when, whether it was a negative thought or wanting to gossip, getting involved in something she didn't want to ultimately do. And it was like, who do I have to become? Right? Who do I need to be the person that I want in the future? And so she would use that as a physical trigger to snap the rubber band on her wrist to sort of snap herself out of it mentally to, whoa, tell the horse to go the other way. And it's just
So
another
good.
thing that she did that I did for years. I wore colored neon rubber band on my wrist for years. And I used to teach that to all of my clients when it came to food as well. So just another like tactical thing that you can do if you're not as quick to recognize yet, keyword being yet, because it is a practice. It's a muscle that we flex over time. And so now you're able to sort of pull back and say, like, hey, we're not going down that path. But when you're in the
Yeah.
beginning stages, you might need something else like a physical reminder. So that's just for the audience that's listening right now. When
I
it
love
comes to
that
social
one.
media, yes, so good. When it comes to social media, I'd love to know. First of all, I'd love to know your thoughts on this because this is like a topic that I feel is a little bit polarizing. And it's this idea of let's stick with triggers for a second, right? You feel triggered. You don't like this person's content. So you can mute them or unfollow them. It's
Yeah,
very
yeah,
simple,
yeah,
right? But if you do choose to go down the path of muting or unfollowing, are you then avoiding a trigger or a mirror that could be something that you should, and I say that in quotes, work on, right? Like is unfollowing and muting escaping the thing that you should work on, or is it just like, yo, this is for my mental health? And also,
yeah,
I'm the curator. We forget that we're the curator of what we see on social media. So like
yeah.
you choose to follow people, you choose to see what you're seeing.
Yeah. It's kind of like I always say, like, if you don't like the channel you're watching, you just change it. If
Right.
you go into a restaurant, like I have this very, like, very vivid memory of going to Papagino's again with my dad. My mom is a full-time hairstylist and she used to own her own salon. So we were always with my dad when we were younger. And for whatever reason, we would always go to Papagino's in Rhode Island. Like it's on, like, I don't know, I think it's on Route 2 in Warwick. And there was
Warwick.
this huge Warwick. There was this huge jukebox box machine, and I think of that a lot. Like, if you don't like the record you're playing, like you have the power to change it. If you don't like the song that's playing, change the record. So I personally don't. And like you are the creator of your life. You are like the editor, cinematographer, director, all of that. So you eat through your eyes and your ears just as much as you do your mouth. So if you do not like what you are seeing, what is being curated on this feed that you are literally curating, then like
Change the channel.
change channel, like
Yeah.
let it go.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of like muting and things like that, muting, blocking, like I think like whatever you have to do to protect your peace, because it's about you at the end of the day. Like, isn't that what all of this is about? Like, what it's supposed to be something that I would hope adds to your life instead of takes away from it. But I
Yeah.
think, like I said at the beginning, there's just so much noise and like everyone's a critic. Everybody like used to have to be critically acclaimed. You couldn't just be a critic. And now everybody's a critic. Everyone's a pro. Everybody is like grit in a Google search bar. But through that, it's kind of like really muddied the waters of actual pros, actual like people who know what is going on. And I just think it's like really murky. So in my opinion, when you're thinking like, oh, well, this thing's triggering me. Maybe that's not for you to necessarily discover in the moment. Like,
Mm-mm.
yeah, maybe you can like be like, oh, why does that? But I'd say a lot of the stuff on the internet is just like annoying things that you don't want to see. If it's like, I don't know, everybody seems to be getting married and you're like, well, I'm not engaged or something like that. Maybe that is something you just like mute or whatever. And then you're like, okay, well, why do I feel what I feel? I actually did a whole podcast episode on that because I was just like, I feel like people are, when you see all that, that is super triggering. But
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think you're like, oh, this is my trigger. And now I have to go dissect what this means within me. I think you can like bless and release and be like, okay, like my piece over everything else. And if that looks like unfollowing people or something I did recently.
Ooh, tell us.
Yeah. I created a new Instagram just so I could have a curated feed of things I want to see.
Yes.
And it's literally only scriptures like Bible verses, personal development quotes. So it's almost like the entire thing is just a quote free feed for me to scroll through
I love that.
because obviously I've used my Instagram for so long as a business tool. I followed so many different people back that I don't see anything really that like I want to see unless
Mm-hmm.
I'm seeking it out. Whereas I created this new Instagram. It's like my secret
Secret.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we all
And it's
have one. I hope we all
yeah,
do. I do.
yeah, yeah. And now it's just all things I want to see. And it's inspiring. I don't
Yeah.
log on and I'm like, oh my God, I'm immediately infiltrated with like everything that I should be doing better or differently in my business at all times, all the time. It's just like nice people talking or like
Yeah.
little quotes. And I'm like, this is so lovely.
Yeah.
So I'd say protect your peace above
Yeah.
all else.
I agree. We have so many coaches that listen to this podcast, and yours as well. Lots of coaches, entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
digital marketers. And especially at the beginning phases of a business, it's really natural and organic to follow other people who do what you do or who are doing what you do, but they're a little bit further ahead, right? And you're learning from these people. And then maybe you're like me and you've been in masterminds for a decade. And after a point when you're saying like you follow these people back and you meet people at events and stuff, your whole feed turns into like essentially your quote unquote competitors.
Yeah.
How do you stay authentic to your own voice when you, not just when you're comparing, but this comes up for people all the time. I saw something that Maddie posted recently. It was so good. I want to say the same thing. I wanted to say a very similar thing, but she already said it. And now I don't want to look like I'm copying her, or I can't even think of a better way to say it because she actually said it better than I was going to say it in the first place. So now I'm paralyzed and I'm not going to post anything. How do you sort of navigate like being authentic and not getting consumed by the noise?
Okay. So two things. One thing I did, and I can only relate this to like, well, so I'll relate it to my soul cycle career. I muted almost every soul cycle instructor out there. Like, I love you all if you're listening, but I was like, every time I log on, I see someone doing something else, it makes me second guess what I'm doing. And I know I'm awesome. So, like, why would I let anything pull me from that center? And it always does. Why can't I do what she's doing? Why can't I do? I've muted everybody that I work with because all it does, like, and if I want to be inspired by something you're doing, and if I want to support you, I will go seek you out because it's in a moment where I'm not being caught off guard, or I'm not having like a quote unquote weak moment where it just infiltrates me and then kind of like knocks me off my center for the rest of the day. Again, like that spiritual armor can get hit a lot of different ways. So I mute a lot of people. So speaking of that mute button, it can also be like, I love you. I want to support you by following you, whatever, but I can't see what you're constantly doing because it makes me second guess what I'm doing.
Yeah.
The second part of that with the coaching space of like, oh, now it's all my competitors. I feel like it's such a give and take with that. And again, like it's so great to see what other people are doing, but then you're going to always second guess then what you're doing. So coming back to kind of like those divine downloads and what you're feeling and what you're saying, I think what is personal is universal. So there's a guarantee if you're feeling it or wanted to say it, there's somebody else that's already or out there saying it or doing it too. But there is enough space, like that whole saying, like you don't lose light when a candle lights another candle. So I don't think it should paralyze you. I think it should be like, wow, a rising tide lifts all ships. Like we're all like kind of on this elevated path or this path of elevation together. But I think you always have to figure out how to put your own spin on it somehow, because like always, 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 it's so cheesy, but it's like you are your superpower. So the second that you look at someone else and try to do it like their way, or I kind of want to say it the way they did or whatever, it's like you're dimming that innate power within you, which is why people follow you or buy from you or like seek you out. So I think instead of letting it paralyze you, I would hope that you could be like, okay, let me just go do what I was going to do, not second guess it. Clearly, there is a like vibrational wave here, a culture climate that we're all on and feeling this thing right now. What's personal is universal. So, like, let's elevate it a little bit more.
It's so good. There have been so many mic drop moments, and I feel like we're just getting started, but we're also coming up on an hour, and I want to be mindful of your time. All right, before we get into some rapid fire questions.
Okay. Oh, I love rapid fire.
Yeah. Obviously, I want to know where people can find you, pimp yourself out, tell us everything. But most importantly, make sure you tell us about your journal, which is epic, your podcast, and anything else that you have going on.
Okay. So where you can find me, it goes down in the DM. So at Mads Tads, MADDZTADDZ on Instagram. Here's the thing. My last name now, well, my married last name is different, but my original last name is Ciccone. It's also Madonna's last name. So literally almost every iteration of Madison Ciccone, Mad Ciccone, Maddie Ciccone, it's all taken. So I actually went through like a huge crisis. I think, yeah, I know. I went through a huge crisis of like, how am I going to be like my brand without my name? And then I was like, well, like there's so many other people that have created brands without like their actual Skinny Confidential. Like there's so many brands out there. So I was like, I am up until now, Mads Tats. That's where you can find me on Instagram. I also have a podcast called Wicked Fearless. I created a gratitude practice that's available on Amazon Prime. It's called Wildly Capable Wicked Fearless. So really all things Wicked Fearless are kind of like synonymous with the brand name. And then I am going to be relaunching my group coaching program, which is a 12-week group coaching program in the fall, also titled Wicked Fearless. And right now on my website, you can basically go and get on the wait list for that right now if you want.
Love it.
So
I love it.
Launch that. I think it'll be like the 11th or 12th time, thanks to you, Jess. So
11th or 12th time.
Yeah. So
holy time.
Yeah, I think I was doing like 3 or 4, 5, I was like just in that cycle. And then I really pulled back, obviously going into this year with my wedding being in May. And I was like, how about you just don't launch anything? But I did launch my gratitude journal. I was like, don't launch anything, but you can go launch this. So I'm really excited. I'm like revamping the whole thing. You know, it was like when you do a total refresh and you like go back in and you have to like have the total ick over your messy action that you took, you know, in 2020 when you created it, and then do all your videos and stuff over. So
Yeah.
it's a cool process.
That's incredible. I'm so proud of you. It's so cool to see people that I've worked with. You know, we didn't get into it today, but we did. We got to work together a couple of years ago, and it's really
Yeah.
sweet to see them like still doing it in different iterations and making it really theirs and learning the rules to break the rules and just making more of an impact. You got hundreds of people live in studio every day, but then thousands of people online too, and it's incredible. So we'll link everything in the show notes, from the gratitude practice to the podcast, and you've got your website and everything and your Instagram. We'll put that stuff in the show notes. So you ready for a couple of rapid fire?
I think so. Am I? Yeah.
Okay. I know you do read. So if you are currently reading something, if not, that's okay. But what are you currently reading or listening to?
Okay. So I have a couple. Look at, I have them all right here. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
High achiever.
So number 1. Yeah.
I didn't even ask for this.
Yeah. The Art of Bouncing Back. So I had
one.
Coach Dar on the podcast recently, and she is like literally fire. So as you know, reformed, I still feel like I'm a D1 athlete. The Art of Bouncing Back. So I got that. I am working with Judy Holler right now in her speaker school.
Amazing.
And I've gone back and forth with Judy. She came on the podcast. So she was like, you have to read The War of Art. So that's on my list right now. But if I were to give like a suggestion of what to go and read that will like blow your mind, I think I would say The Gift of Imperfections by Brene Brown. It's like such a classic, but I think those were some of like the first books, you know, like a couple of Gabby's, a couple of Brene Brown's. Those kind of were like the beginnings of really like peeling so many layers back and like getting into all this juicy goodness that is this world we're in.
I couldn't agree more. I feel like there are just layers. There's certain steps with it, personal development, and those, you know, Gabby Bernstein oftentimes is a beginning step, and then you sort of go to the next one and the next one and the next one, and all of a sudden you're down this deep, dark rabbit hole of deepness. Amazing. What do you want to be when you were growing up?
I think I wanted to be maybe like a veterinarian or like I think it was like an actress or a veterinarian. Here's a fun fact about me. When I was younger, I think I've posted this before. There was a yearbook. I believe it was my 6th grade yearbook, and they asked everybody what they wanted to be when they grew up. And for whatever reason, I interpret it a different way than everybody else. So in the yearbook, you know, I want to be a doctor when I grow up. I want to like cure cancer. There's all these kids doing. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be all these things. I said I wanted to drive a red Porsche convertible. Okay. So not only am I kind of pissed off at the PTG or whoever that was like, hey, Madison, so what we really meant was like, you know, let's go bigger than that. But they actually published that in my
It's amazing.
yearbook. To this day, I want to I'm just going to like rent one / buy one and go to the school and just take a picture with it. And just
you totally should.
So you know. So yeah, I that was a fun fact about me, but I think it was like a veterinarian. I rode horses a lot. So like that was probably veterinarian, actress, like
love it,
singer, whatever.
So they say new levels, new devils. What are you currently struggling with? What's a devil? What's a new level that you're struggling with right now?
I think talking about it, I honestly think I'm in the throes of comparison of like looking at people's businesses blow up. And I'm like, okay, well, what is it? And just in a constant state of being like, know your worth. Like I always think of that line, know yourself, know your worth. And I feel like that's like a rap song, but I can't really think of which one it is. But I feel like that's something I'm constantly working on too right now, especially when you're trying to create new things within your business and you're trying to like do more things and rework and retool and kind of like find the nooks and crannies. It's kind of like you're just like all the dials are on the wall and you're like moving things around and get it like quote unquote just right. like the Goldilocks complex of the business we're in.
Yeah.
So I think that's something I'm struggling with too. And I think that's why I can talk about it so authentically, is because I actually am walking through it too. And I know something you say a lot, like teach from the scar, not the wound, right? But I think when it comes to that comparison, it's like it's something you're constantly going to be working on. It's not something like you wake up and you're like, I'm done, I'm good, like I'm solved.
Yep.
So I think that's something I'm struggling a little bit with too. And I get a little bit in my head with, and I just am constantly reminding myself that like you are you, and that's your superpower. And I am a huge Marvel comics fan. And I always relate it to like try to pick your favorite character. And like, while I could, I said this at an event at BC recently, and the kids were like, yeah, but what's your favorite? And I was like, I think Iron Man, but like, I can't have Iron Man without Rocket and all these other characters. Like, I need them all. And that just goes to show you there's just so much room and so much space for so many different people and personalities, because everybody loves and gravitates towards different things, and trying to like stay in that energy.
Well, thank you for being honest and authentic, because we all deal with it. So, all right, last three. I have to ask you this one. I don't ask everybody this one. This is a duel. Favorite DJ / festival that you've been to?
Okay, favorite DJ is going to be Griffin. I'm obsessed with Griffin. Griffin, if you're listening, like there's okay,
yes,
they
Griffin
did a
listens to the show.
If we were like Soul Cycle did a ride with Griffin, and the fact that I didn't get to teach it like almost broke my heart. It did break my heart, but it's fine. We're over it. It'll happen again. I went to his concert recently. It was the best thing I've ever went to. So I'd say Griffin. I play him all the time in class. And
amazing.
Best like festival show I ever went to. I mean, I went to Coachella a lot, but I feel like yeah, I don't remember what year it was at Coachella, but it was when Calvin Harris did the main stage. I think that was a really good year. And it was Coachella used to fall on Lent a lot, and I used to give up alcohol during Lent, speaking of which. And I was always super sober at Coachella. So I got to enjoy it in like a very different way than most people. I was going to DJs at like 10 a.m.
I love it.
Like,
$50,000 question. If I were to cut you a check for $50,000 tomorrow that you had to use on your business or in your business, you could split it up. You could do one lump sum. How would you use it?
I would use it for all tech stuff. Like tech, that is my biggest thing, is to offload all tech, like not do it yourself. I think that's something when you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur, is like being like, I'm not good at this, and admitting that. I think that's really hard. And then asking for help is also really hard. So being like, I don't want to do anything website. I don't want to touch any of that. None of it. I want none of it. I would give the check to someone and be like, create, because I just don't want any of it. Exactly.
I love it. Yeah. All right. Final question, my dear. We believe that we are reflections of our business, and they will grow to the extent that we grow. And so we name the company Digital Business Evolution, because we're always evolving and growing. So what is your next personal or business evolution?
I am wanting to keynote speak on more stages.
Yes.
So that is my main goal this year. There's two. I'm going to write a book, and I want to be a main keynote speaker. I've done a lot of panels. I've done a lot of informational sessions. I do a lot of like more educational, where companies that bring me in privately, like I've worked at BC, MGH, like these huge places that are so awesome, so well renowned, but it's on a very like hired, closed off basis. Like, speaking of comparison, I'm always like, damn, I don't have like these great videos of me speaking at these events, because they're private events, but I'm like, I'm working these events, I'm getting paid. This is awesome. I'm getting paid to speak, but like, I don't have anything to show for it. So like, I'm preparing myself. So my thing is like to book some like major keynote stages, like Create and Cultivate's on my list, Paris Woman, like all the things. So that would be the goal.
I love it. Ladies and gents, you heard it here. Madison Ciccone. If you love this episode, let us know. Take a screenshot, share it out on social, tag Maddie at Mads Taz. It's MADDZTADDZ. So tag her at Mads Taz, tag me at I am Jessica DeRose. Let us know what some of your takeaways were. That's the best way that we can give back to Maddie and let her know that what she's doing is, of course, incredible, as she already knows. So, my dear, I love you. I'm super grateful for you. And for the rest of us, cheers to your evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.